it wasn't, summer season hadn't kicked off yet. So maybe they were just ramping up for it and releasing a little bit of little films before summer took over.
That could have been. I'm not really quite sure what their thinking was at May 7th, because that doesn't really seem like a good time to release a teenage type of film, right. Because maybe it could have been a lot of different things. I mean, it was a $25 million budget and it made back $14 million. That's a big kick in the pants.
And MTV released it too. So you thought, MTV released it. Oh, this is going to be hip.
And they crushed it later on in life. I mean, they were doing fairly well. MTV films. You had Varsity Blues,
Rushmore,
Kingpin,
Virgin Suicides,
Beavis and Butthead Do America,
Kramer vs. Kramer.
One thing I thought was,
thank you.
What a few things I found was pretty interesting was that the same guys who produced this, Albert Berger, wound up producing Nebraska.
Yep, good movie.
That was a great movie. And Jim Burke produced Green Book, which won Best Picture last year.
So it had some big producers behind it.
It did. And David Gale, who was the driving force behind MTV Films in the 90s and the early 2000s, he was one of the producers on this as well. He wound up doing Dead Man on Campus and Kings of Comedy, as well as the other movies that we did mention.
I got some beers, man. We should drink them. I love that line. I don't know anything else about that movie, but I got some beers. We should drink
Varsity Blues?
No, Dead Man on Campus.
Oh, I just remember that. I remember the ending that Mark Paul Gosselaar's like cleaning toilets. I remember that part. And I just remember whenever the guy opens up the shower curtain, that they're standing there with a knife and the other one has like a rope. And he's like, they're like, ah! He's like, what the hell is going on? But, I mean, this movie has done fairly well for itself over time. I would say that it probably gained a cult following. I noticed a lot of, when I was researching this movie, I noticed a lot of 20-year anniversary articles on this. A lot of them are referencing the 2016 election in relation to this, which I think is kind of ridiculous, considering that's like saying you can look 17 years in the future, base a movie now on it. That doesn't really...
Hey, so Alexander Payne, did you know Trump was going to run for president?
That was kind of like... what?
No, wait, did you know Trump was going to run for president in 92 when you wrote the book?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, that's kind of ridiculous to think that. But the movie has gotten a strong cult following, I'm assuming because the 90s have made a full comeback.
Well, it's good, though. This is
and it's a damn good movie.
This is one of those movies that's good. And people... I think I like it more than when I saw it when I was 19, because I have a better understanding of it.
I originally saw it on Comedy Central, because remember, Comedy Central in the early 2000s was not what it was now.
Yeah.
They would literally have a commercial break every 8 minutes on the 8-minute mark. So literally sometimes in the middle of a conversation, cut to commercial. Yeah. But that's when I saw Election, because they would show more obscure comedies.
Monty Python, The Holy Grail, they used to play all the time.
Life of Brian. Yeah. They used to play, Monty Python, The Holy Grail all the time. But over the years, it really has held up, because if you look up older films, or not, I guess you can call this an older film now, the scores on the different websites will drop. They do drop over the years because people tend to think differently about them. But this one has kind of held up. On IMDb, it gets a 7.3, 83
That's
Meta.
Good. 83 Meta? That's high.
And 92% on Rotten Tomatoes.
How could you give this a negative review?
I would think if you didn't understand it, because I know that sometimes these comedies don't really land. People don't like dark comedies. They look at I'll mention that later down.
A dark comedy.
I'll mention a really dark comedy in my recommendations later on, but that one kind of some people don't understand it. Or a city like City of Lost Children, for instance.
Jeez Louise, yeah.
People just don't get it, or they don't understand how these things can be comedies, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's like, yes, it is. It's kind of hilarious that this man, who is a very well-respected teacher and does a good job, he's a good teacher at first, is literally sabotaging his career because he doesn't want this girl to succeed. And why? Considering it won't affect his life at all.
None.
But because he thinks that she'll affect other people. It's like, would she? I don't know. Possibly, but I just think that idea is just really funny to think.
Even when she rips down the posters, Tracy Flick, in this movie, I don't see it as overly malicious. I just think she's had a rough life. You know, her dad wasn't around. She was an older gentleman. She had a relationship with an older guy. She hasn't, her mom isn't easy on her. I think it was just a moment of frustration, not maliciousness by her character. I just think she snapped.
When she tore down on the posters, I think that I agree with you on that. I think she was more angry at the fact that things aren't going the way she wants them to, and then just the fact that this poster keeps falling down is to show, like, kind of mocking her almost. I mean, like, You can't make me stand up. And she's like, yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah,
and she rips
it wasn't
to shreds.
premeditated, right?
No, I don't think so at all. I
gotta tell you, dude, that scene when he takes her home, Dave, the teacher, takes her home. He's like, get down. And then he puts on once, twice, 3 times a lady. I gotta tell you, though, Reese Witherspoon, she got a Golden Globe nomination, but she should have received an Oscar nomination. And Broderick, because they are very good in this movie. But when he's in the bedroom and the arm comes out and he puts it on her shoulder and drags her into the room, Reese Witherspoon does this weird little walk. Did you notice it? Like a very young...
I don't think I paid attention to it.
Yeah, you should just watch the walk. Like, you never see her walk like that in the entire movie. She just does this little walk.
It's just like she's scared, but at the same time, she's like, this must be okay because this is an adult.
It's he doesn't make it's very uncomfortable. And so I thought that was pretty... I just want to tell you something real quick. Jason Reitman, he does screenings for movies, and he's the guy who did Juno and all those films. Mm-hmm. He brought in Chris Klein to talk about Election, and Klein talked about how his whole story about he didn't want his grandma to see it, and he's actually mad at Jason Reitman a little bit because he's like, this kicked off my career in Hollywood, which has been insane. Because he was this kid in Omaha and never acted. 2 years later, he's headlined in a $110 million movie called Rollerball, which is terrible. So I can't.
You know what he's doing now?
What?
He's doing Benchwarmers 2, Breaking Balls.
I mean, I feel bad for the guy because he was plucked out of Omaha.
He was doing well though for a little bit because he was a reoccurring character on Wilfred recently. Yeah. So I mean he was doing all right. He's doing good. I kind of feel for him though because he does have that, like you were saying, like, I mean, he's this Midwest guy and he kind of has this persona that's very like, I guess you'd say welcoming and polite at the same time. Yeah. And it's just kind of like that got taken advantage of, in my opinion, and they just kind of stuck him there. As Rollerball! Let's put him in Rollerball. Let's put him in Street Fighter 2, The Legend of Chun-Li.
In a movie where he has to punch a cow in the ass to get a ring out of it or something. Remember that movie with Hunter Graham? Where they think they're brother and sister, and you don't remember that? And then he has a movie with Lily Sobieski. There's a drama here on Earth, but he picks up this cow's tail and just goes right into his butt. Punches it right in the ass. Cow punch.
Oh my god. Yep. No, I forgot all about that.
Jack said cow right in the butt. But so as they finished, the director Alexander Payne sent a text message to Reitman, and he summed up the entirety of this is how he explains Election now. So this is what the director Alexander Payne sent to Jason Reitman. The entire movie rests on the one shot of the protagonist washing his genitalia in the shower of that motel room. There's just Matthew Broderick scrubbing his balls.
I don't know how. I mean, that was like a small moment that I like kind of remembered.
But it's like this movie's so loaded. Like, so he's this married guy who's about to rig an election, and he's having an affair with a woman that he somewhat loves. His wife seems really chill, by the way.
She seems great.
Yeah, and so then he's just sitting in a motel room cleaning his balls. It's just a weird scene, dude.
He mentions that in the commentary, and he said that he put that in there because he said every guy that he's talked to about going on their first date, or they know that they're gonna have sex, that they do that. Yeah. I was like, I mean,
Now, I did show a scene to my students in this. So in this movie, I love his complaints. He hates wet downs of streets.
Yeah. I do too.
Taking off the rear view mirror of a car. But I liked in this that he uses actual homes. I thought that was really cool. But in this scene, he did have some shots where he had to build them in sets. Where he built those really tall rooms. And
he says that they would normally use a crane, but he said that they
couldn't fit it.
Exactly. So they had, because he wanted to show all 4 walls. Yep. So they had to have like they brought some guys down from Canada to be like a pulley system. They just had the guy with the camera, and then they pulled him up.
That's really cool. So I showed that to my student. I showed them the on-location shooting and how authentic it looks, and they shot in a school during school time. And then I showed them how tall the rooms were and how they pulled that shot off, and I kind of drew it out on the board. Oh, and they're all like, oh my gosh.
It's really impressive. Yeah. I liked also to go with them shooting at an actual school. He mentions in the commentary that he wanted to use as much of the lighting of a school that you would normally use. Yeah. He said that the schools, that one of the things that he noticed a lot in these schools was that there was not a lot of windows. So it's almost like students refer to themselves as like being prisoners there. So he said, well, who's the real prisoners? Because the teachers are the ones who are there longer than the students. Yep. And he also wanted to showcase the bad lighting that was in these schools, which was the fluorescent lighting. And it's like, if you watch the movie again or pay attention to that, you'll notice that there's not a lot of soft lighting. It's a lot of hard lighting, but it's because he wanted it to look like you were actually there. And it was really well done. One thing I wanted to talk about was in the beginning with the student that says to Matthew Broderick when he's like, okay, well, class has ended, the bell rings. And he goes up to him, he's like, oh, hey, I missed that test the other day. Can I do a retake? And he said, the Alexander Payne says in the commentary, he just went up to this kid and said, hey, I want you to say this to Matthew Broderick while you're leaving. And we're going to get his reation. And that's why it looks so authentic, because he's just like...
And the kid improvised it, too.
It was. There was a lot of improvisation. Sorry. In the movie, because he wanted to make it feel as realistic as possible. We has a lot of the students. He said that he brought a lot of the like I said earlier, a lot of the bit parts were done by real students from that school.
Super authentic. That's why it's aged well, I think.
Yeah, and you can relate to it because a lot of these people they don't feel like actors because they're not. And he put very minimal amount of makeup on them just to kind of clean them up. But he had the students basically look like how they did when they came in. There wasn't a lot of makeup, not a lot of hair done, and the clothing was usually theirs. So these kids looked exactly like how they would normally look.
Did you work on that movie Prematura with me? Because that was in a high school every day, Groundhog Day, mainly in a high school. But we shot during the summer, so we didn't get to use it. Did you work on that with me?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. But that was, you watch it now, and then you watch Election, and it's so smart how he did that with the students. It just adds so much authenticity.
It does, and it makes you believe that this is a real thing that you're watching, as opposed to
sending kids all day,
like disturbing behavior where you're like, these people would never.
This kid's 40. Yeah, and then we did that Airborne pod, and I love that movie, and it was a really fun podcast. But there's a guy in that movie that was like 27, and he looks like a 40-year-old dude. I love how they
made fun of that in Scary Movie, where they had like Marlon Wayans playing a high school student who's clearly like 35. Yeah. They made that movie.
But I mean, I really like how they did that. I guess what I was bringing up before is that movie Premature is good, but I guess just the extra thought he put into it with Election, with the authenticity of it. I mean, it's just.
And also, you do want to showcase, your hometown. Yep. So, I mean, he's from that area. They shot like right by the high school that he went to. Some of the teachers that were in that, the lady at the end, the Spanish teacher, was the actual Spanish teacher of the director in real life.
Oh, that's cool.
And the two ladies that were at the election ballots, the two older ladies, they were the teachers of the director in real life when he was in high school.
I'm Tracy Flick. I know.
Yeah.
I heard that line and I was like, oh, that was so good.
Well, it adds to the authenticity of the film. And I think, much like what you said, that's one of the reasons why it's stood the test of time. Yeah, because people don't look at it and go, oh, well, this person doesn't fit. It's like, no, everybody jives really well. And
I also showed my students the scene, I don't know if you remember during the commentary, where let's see, it's Matthew Broderick, and I guess we could say his character name, but whatever. It's Mr. McAllister, and then it's the kid, Larry, played by Nicholas D'Augusto, who has acted a lot since this movie, the kid who spits on his window. This was his first movie, and he's been busy since 99.
He says in the commentary that the kid was actually just a kid that went to the school, and he was like part of the drama class, if I'm not mistaken. So he wanted to give him this small role, but he was literally just a kid that went to the school.
And now he's in Gotham as Harvey Dent. The kid works. So it's kind of neat that this was his first movie. But I like that scene when he explains in the commentary how he's like, I did this by accident, but it looks pretty great, where the shots on Broderick are just a flat-on shot, like just a static camera shot. But then when you cut over to Larry, it was a little skewed. It was a little, cockeyed. So it kind of put the world off center.
Oh, that's reversed.
Yeah. Matthew Broderick was kind of cockeyed. Matthew Broderick was
cockeyed, and Larry was straight on. But the opening shot of that, where he had to get the principal and Larry and McAllister, because Larry's so tall, I think he's like 6'4",
big kid,
something like that. But he couldn't. They shot that in the detention area of the actual school to redress it like the principal's office. So they had to cock it, basically, to get everybody in there. And like a lot of people who would watch the movie say, well, why didn't they remove the wall? It's like, because they couldn't. It was a real
on location.
It was, and I like Alexander Payne's choice to, like you said, that he likes to shoot in these people's actual houses and the school, because it adds more authenticity to the film, and and also, I mean, it's somewhat cheaper.
Yeah,
let's just face facts here, and you're saving a lot of money.
Exactly. Especially, you know, Omaha too. There's no sound stages. Maybe there's abandoned warehouses.
I'm sure they may have one because I think
I'm sure there's abandoned
Nebraska
warehouses
has
everywhere.
a few.